What you see here in the Miro board, and now it's not moving, there you go, is basically that we did workshops taking steps, oh, now it goes without me, where we prepare something, we prepare our analysis, we have a discussion about it, make decisions, and we go to the next block. So those are the steps that you'll be seeing later. What is important, especially considering the topic of this session, the business model, is that for Southend we are, of course, is the work by Matt McDonald about implementing all these coastal interventions of muddy pools, etc., to take out the energy of the waves. But as an academic exercise, we were taking the defense line to a zone. So we're looking into not how to defend Southend-on-Sea only on the line, the coastline, but also to see how it can be integrated with the urban developments behind this line, and also how issues there, natural issues of, for example, pluvial flooding, how this can be integrated into a spatial strategy over a longer time with the inclusion of nature-based solutions. And one of the solutions we're looking at is basically accepting the seawater as it is, since that is nature too. And now I have to get juice for my computer because it is complaining. Sorry about that. So what you see here is that we're really looking into the interaction between coastal engineering and urban development. And what is missing here is really that the Maritime Archaeological Trust also had a lot of input where the longue durée played an important role. So that's the image here on the left, and on the right you see the steps that we're taking. So we're looking at the longue durée of the area, the history, and what we can take into qualities into the future. What's the urban project? How do we need to set priorities? What are the strategies? And in the end, what are measures? So these are the steps that we basically took. Well, we started with a presentation of John of the pilot, of what's really going on and what are the necessities for Southend-on-Sea. And here you see an overview of the research that was done before the workshop to really get behind the longue durée. So the Maritime Archaeological Trust is that the urban history, the urban development, what's going on now, what is needed, what are the issues, and flood risk management by our hydraulic engineers. So you see here the three fields that were basically merged into making a long-term strategy. So we had to discover what is really the problem and also define which problems are we really addressing and which ones we are not, because we're of course not a huge team. And then also from a first step, the integration of, well, what kind of solutions do you see as a perspective from the three fields, where we really, and this is very important, included the hydraulic, the vision of the hydraulic engineers of dealing with the flood risk and how that could be made spatial. So we asked them basically something that they usually not asked for to do. And then, if we were looking at solution directions, we basically merged this into one concept that was then directly translated into the long-term strategy on the scale of the whole front of Southend-on-Sea. And in this, I think it's important that then you can really also connect opportunities. So we're not just solving a problem, we're looking for opportunities. So the four main aspects of the strategy that we proposed was that the longue durée is very important. So you have to work with the coast as a dynamic system. It's been like that always, it will be like that in the future, and this is a quality. And include the archaeological history into this, into the design of the zones. Then the topo aspect is that the vulnerability in relation to the flood risk is very important, and that is within the area. There are areas that are very high up, so they basically do not suffer from flooding. So in planning the town, you really need to take this into account. So we defined different zones where you have the high zone, no flood risk, where there's an area where there's low density and very green. So you could accept and welcome, embrace this water as a quality for your new to be planning, developing town part. There are parts that you can resist with grey infrastructure and you can advance so that you can make newer interventions. Then the eco aspect is of course very important, and this is not only nature-based solutions in the coastal zone, but also connect them as one system in the area behind. And the accessibility aspect was important because it is a touristic town and there are loads of cars and infrastructure, etc. So these are basically, then the definition of the different strategic areas where these different strategies come together in another combination, basically. Then we chose Schubernerias. That's for me difficult to pronounce, where we basically then really translated these strategies into local design, where it of course became very important to do the analysis on where does the water go, what are now hard interventions there, what is what's the green structure there, and also this is about the ecology, and there's an area with bombs. And at the same time, also our engineers modeled basically, and I think that's the next you can see here, they really modeled storms and what the water will do in the future. So for Schubernerias, the idea is that if you take no action, this will be the flooding in 2100 with a specific storm. But if you have the strategy that we follow, where you say, well, we're going to embrace the overtopping because it's a green area, and then it has a multifunction, and we're going to live with it as a new strategy, then the engineers really modeled where we had to put height in the areas, make the topography more extreme to be able to have the overtopping here at the coastline, and that the water once every 100 years will flow in with a specific storm, offering basically quality. So it means that this area will be redesigned and will offer a lot of amenities for the community, because it will green space, biodiverse space, and it will also offer new opportunities to develop properties that are then situated in a very special environment and also close to the natural conditions. So this is now where we are at basically in the project, where we see where, on the smaller scale, you can really design these environments. And well, as a business model, of course, here you really expand from just defense to the line to an urban area development that also will bring income to maybe finance this solution, as in accepting the water coming in. So this is, I hope, a good start for the discussion that I'm very interested in to hear. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Francie. So, I mean, first up, let's since we finished the presentation, let's just go directly in with questions for that. So, does anyone have any questions for Francie on the approach and delivery? Just feel free to stick your hand up, crack on, or go for it.
Yes. Good morning, Francie. I have a question. This strategy, was it made in cooperation with local stakeholders, I presume? Or was it?
No, it's not. And this is because South-Anton-Sea does not have a long-term vision and strategy at the moment. And in the pilot project, it's about spatial interventions that are really focused at the frontage of the town. But especially also for the project, we were interested in really performing interdisciplinary design also with the Maritime Archaeological Trust. So we see this as an academic exercise, but we of course took information and got information from South-Anton-Sea. And basically John was our only stakeholder in this case, but he's been very representative, I think. But the next ideas is to present this to the council. John can talk about this better than I, to show how you can think about this. So, and then you, of course, Southend could do it real time, and then you would really, include stakeholders in doing it real time. So this is basically a sort of dry run of how it could be done.
And as a follow-up to this, and I guess this is for John as well, what are you expecting much in the way of problems from the locals in terms of the loss of land, potential loss of land, etc.? What are you expecting the outcome to be when you get to that point?
We're not actually losing any land from this. Actually, what we're doing is protecting land from future development.
Okay.
So we're basically keeping green space and protecting the green space for the chance of a potential for flooding, but not guaranteed. based on a 100-year storm event?
Because now they want to build ports there and want to fill it up with a lot of housing, and now it's a green area. So in that sense, well, this is of course speculation, but we have the same case in Vlissingen, is basically very comparable. Is that of course, if you can say, well, we're conserving green areas because we needed to buffer to live with new sea level levels, then but it also by conserving it, but develop it with a green intention, we can offer new amenities to the town. So this could, of course, be something that stakeholders, people living there, or decision makers, that we want to show them that there's also another way of looking at it. So that it's multifunctional in a sense. Yeah.
It's funny because I'm working on a site at the moment which is the other way around. They've already built on it, and we're trying to model to prove that in the future it won't be viable, and we need to get them to move off it. I mean, they're only campsites, but it's still quite a challenge. It's a lot harder to do that than prevent them from building it in the first place. So I definitely
Exactly.
the right approach is going to cause chaos when we go out to the public.
Well, yeah, just to give you an idea on the area itself had a planning application put in by a developer that was actually vetoed by the Environment Agency because of the level of protection in the area.
Okay, and they actually listen to the veto. That's good, because they often don't, and we get it there anyway. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions for Francie directly on that before we just move into some general discussion on the topic? I'm taking that as a no. So I was coming up with some prompts to talk about discussions for us to discuss here, and I was trying to keep the discussion positive, but my experience with writing business cases for NFM projects hasn't always been particularly positive, and it's been quite a battle. So I mean, my impression with the business case process and the PF calculator are the biggest blockers we've got for delivering NFM schemes at the moment, in my opinion. So I mean, they seem to be designed for engineering schemes where you have clear evidence on the standard of protection you're going to get and what you're going to get out of it, and you get in, you build a scheme, and then you leave, and there'll be some future maintenance costs. But that doesn't really fit with NFM, where you've got the evidence is maybe a bit ropey, it's all a bit more vague, and it's going to take several years to deliver, and the delivery is more working with landowners over quite a few years in a lot of cases, rather than just coming in and building some defences. So it'd be good to hear if you guys agree with that, and potentially what the way around it is, what we might be able to push up to national. So how in your case, Francie, how did the when it came to getting the money for the work you've been doing so far, was there any issues with the level of evidence you had in terms of what you were doing, getting the funding?
Well, this is of course an academic exercise, and we have done something similar for the other pilot, Vlissingen. And for that case, we also looked into the cost-benefit analysis of two strategies. So one was holding the line, and the other one was similar to this one, where you expand and basically make it into an area development. And then what you see is exactly what you point out, is that the problem of holding the line is that it is an infrastructure project where the CBA is quite clear-cut, and you also can get the numbers in quite easily because they are available. And so you would basically calculate damage in death and property loss, and you would calculate the cost to build a dike. So then you're done. And what you see, of course, just as you say, in cost benefits analysis of area development, it's not only about direct costs and direct benefits, but in our field, you also include effects. And effects are long-term effects of amenities, or maybe people feeling more healthy, more happy, which impacts, of course, costs of hospitals, etc. So as you said, it becomes really fuzzy. And so we put, for that case, these two things together and show that if you want to make other decisions about flood defense, and you make it into area development, that you really, that it just doesn't become so clear cut, and this is something that I think is really a paradigm change. That we really, we need to think differently about this, and so that's going to take, I would say, another 30 years to accept this. So, yeah.
John, from your knowledge of the area, if the work done to date develops into a scheme, do you think it's going to be justifiable with the current system, current processes?
I would hope so, because obviously there's complexities in the area. There's a lot of history in the area. The area was actually used in the Second World War, so there's actually some protected monuments in the area, actually on the seawall, which will make it very complex to actually then hold the line in that area.
And unexploded ordnance, I imagine,
and ordnance as well. Yeah, so there was a quick fire battery there as part of the defences for the estuary, and effectively what the army did after the war was dump the stuff wherever. So it could be under the beach, it could be under the seawall, it could actually just be in an area just behind the seawall that's got a very, very large badger community now, which also makes it very interesting.
So that's going to increase your risks and your costs. Hang on, my computer shut itself down. Okay, I had a follow-up question to the first one, which was on delivery of NFM. Obviously, you need to get your funding for your business case before you crack on and start work and really start your engagement. But large amounts of NFM are reliant on having the landowner on board, but we don't have powers to carry out works in upper catchments, for instance. We need the approval of the landowner, but you don't have that by the time when you've gone in for your business case, and then you're completely reliant on a completely uncontrollable factor that is getting landowners on board after you've applied for your money. So it's an issue I'm coming up against on quite a lot of our business cases when you go in, you don't have that landowner approval. I presume that's not going to be so much of a problem here if you're working on the foreshore when it's Crown Estates owned, easier to get their approval. Interested if anyone's come up against this on more fluvial NFM schemes.
We do have a question from Mike Adams.
Oh, Mike, crack on.
Sorry, it's not linked to the point that you just made, Rob.
That's fine.
But it's just going back to that funding piece and developing the benefits case. I just wondered what the sort of anticipated funding model was for that South End project. So where is the money going to come from? Is the anticipation that it will be primarily centralised government funding, or will there be significant local authority input? Because obviously that then sort of links to that wider benefits case, and where there are sort of benefits that are being calculated that are applicable to different funding mechanisms. And I just wondered if there'd been any sort of thought into that and how that might look moving forward.
The rough idea is that hopefully it will tie into the local plan, where we're looking at doing quite a large development in the area anyway, sort of more inland. So hopefully the leftovers from that development will then be moved to the area to create the extra material needed to create the dikes. So actually we'll be dealing with the waste problem at the same time.
Okay.
We're quite an interesting case. We're a unitary authority where we own and maintain and manage all of our own defences.
Right, okay.
So we're quite a rare case.
So what sort of time frame are you looking at then in terms of that delivery?
Well, it's all theoretical at the minute. I mean, the next stage will be going to local stakeholders and holding a workshop and saying, look, this is what we've come up with as an idea that could work for the area. It would probably be supported by local residents. Could we develop this to be consulted as part of the local plan moving forward, and possibly look at something around between 2050 and 2100?
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you.
And John, Poppy, crack on. You go first.
Oh, Poppy, we can see you. I'm muted, but we can't hear anything.
I can see you muting and unmuting yourself as well, but that ain't working either.
I'm wondering if Poppy's got a technical issue. Poppy, do you want to have a play around with settings, and we'll just go back to Rob?
Yeah.
And
okay.
if we hear Poppy talking, we'll stop.
Yeah, you keep trying to talk, and we'll see what happens. John, Francie, I had a question. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of words like dike, etc., which sounds fairly traditional, hard engineering. What in the way of environmental benefits are you looking at for the scheme?
Well, it's the dike as it is now in our scheme needs to be heightened very little, like 50 centimeters, which then help to be protected for more general storms. And then only in severe storms it will come over the dike, and then it will be flowing through compartments into the area. But because you have this function of the area, you will when you try to keep a closed soil balance, you can of course make basins in the area using the soil to heighten the edges. And on these edges, you could develop housing blocks, which means that you also have additional real estate, of course, also adding to your funding of the project, and that you will have quite a large area, which is important for a nature-based green. It's important for fluvial flooding, because it can also not only catch water coming from outside, but also water coming from inside. And it is also then an area where there's archaeological heritage, where you can, design with, work with, keep it, dig it up. I mean, that's not clear at the moment. So in that sense, for the environment, it's quite an improvement, instead of just filling it in with housing or digging a port there. So yeah, if you compare those two.
Okay.
Three.
Also, something else that's quite interesting is that Gary also has done an analysis of vegetation and trees that used to be in the area that are now gone, and we can almost make it like a paleo environmental exemplar, where we raise the height of the dikes inland just using soft measures, so it'd be green dikes, and then we plant those with all the historical trees that would have grown in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of reintroducing the previous landscape, going up back to about 7,000 years ago.
Okay, and I presume that the planting the dikes has got other benefits in terms of stability and things as well, potentially. So awesome. Yep. Okay, Poppy, are you sorted out now? You said you've got headphones.
I'll take that as a no. Poppy, if you want to put your question in the chat box, you're more than welcome.
Joys of pandemic technology. Okay, well, while we wait for Poppy to type that, I have another thought. I mean, again, I'm not entirely sure this applies so much to the coastal situation, more fluvial, which is my jam. In terms of the evidence of NFM, is that and in terms evidence leading to justifying projects, has what tools and data does anyone have any requirements for tools and data that can help better justify the environmental benefits of schemes? I know there's been a lot of work put into the flood risk benefits of NFM measures, but we've struggled in the past with the non-flood risk side, as in the carbon and the environmental benefits. Is there any tools that people know of locally that are being worked on or aspire to have that would be useful?
Our colleagues in the Environment Agency down in the southwest are using a locally sourced material to make eco blocks, which is then grown with green material. And as part of their monitoring, they're trying to work out how you can actually quantify the carbon capture of that. And they've found that it is a very, very complex subject.
Yes, everything I've heard just leads to more questions when it's come to the carbon side of things, but it's never positive. Oh, you got your hand up there.
Go ahead, Bert. We've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, I saw that the breakout room will be closed. I have one question. In order of standard of protection, was it quantified how the future floodings, or what damage the future floodings can, or what the defenses should withstand and what damages can be done? Because that is, of course, that starting point is very important for the way you will elaborate the coastal flooding, the future coastal flooding system.
The answer is yes, because that's what our hydraulic engineers are doing. So we're doing reken and teken, to say it in Dutch. So they do the math, and with their input we design, and then we also they test then again the designs. So even though we did not get the the appropriate data from Southampton-on-Sea. Chen has modeled, so she built a model to simulate the storms.